Welcome to the Growth Mindset Podcast. Success isn't a goal, it's a journey. I interview the most incredible humans to keep your mind optimized for growth. Welcome to another episode of the Growth Mindset Podcast. Today, I have Nazra Noushad, and she is a youth leader and entrepreneur focused on technology changing the world. She was in the Knowledge Society network, and I was introduced to her by Shifra Khan, who was on the podcast last year and was one of my favorite podcast episodes. And she said that Nazra is possibly the best human she has ever met. So that's a pretty good introduction. And I've been very excited for this podcast for a while. We've been trying to organize this for quite a long time. I've been enjoying your email updates where you've quit everything in life and you've just gone off to experiment and see what the hell happens and sort of find yourself and stuff. So I'm happy to be a part of that journey, hopefully in some way. So yes, here you are.
Thanks for having me. I'm super excited. And yeah, it has been quite a while trying to set something up. So I'm glad that we're finally here to talk and excited to see where this goes.
Well, let the chaos begin. So firstly, I guess it would be nice to have a little bit more of a background on you. So could you just try and give us a 3-minute, who the hell is Nazra? Where have you come from?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm 19 years old. I am based out of Toronto, Ontario. I've lived here almost my entire life. And kind of growing up, I've had this sense of a need to help the world and build the world and be part of what it means to build the future. And it really came from this idea of connectedness. I always felt connected to the world, and the concept of a global community was never a concept to me. It was always something that felt very real and just true. It was yes, someone in Haiti, someone in Africa, someone in India, they are my neighbors. And we are kind of like this one people. So growing up, I was super ambitious and really wanted to figure out ways that I could help solve problems in the world or help create an impact. And one of the things that I did was when I was in high school, especially, I tried to be super ambitious and I was joining every club and being the president of every club, and quickly found that that wasn't actually the most impactful thing that I could be doing, that it wasn't the most helpful thing, and it didn't seem like it was creating large ripple effects. And there's this organization called Me to We, which I'm sure you might know of. They were a very large social enterprise in Canada, but also did some operation in the US and London, where they had 7 countries around the world and did a lot of sustainability projects for them. So they're a multi-million social enterprise, charity. So every single kid in Canada knows what this organization is, and you would do fundraisers for them. And I was doing bake sales for them. And I kind of took a step one time and was like, I want to do something more. I want to have a larger impact. I want to be able to have a say in the direction in which this charity goes, and not just do bake sales, but really be part of even the decision-making process of what's happening here. So in high school, I actually went on this 2-year journey of hustling, very, very, very much hustling, to become on the board of directors of a We charity, which did end up happening. So I was in high school, ended up sitting on the board of directors for this multi-million charity, and which also had a for-profit arm. So it was a social enterprise, which was an incredible experience and taught me a lot about how I can really do anything that I set my mind to. And I can always think bigger. I can always do more. And at that point, I came across the Knowledge Society. So the Knowledge Society is this human accelerator. It's basically an Olympic level training ground for young people who want to solve the world's hardest problems. So like you would be a kid wanting to play in the NBA, you'd go to school, and then after school, before school, in between school, on the weekends, you're training hard to be part of the NBA. You're shooting your shots, you're doing drills. And that's what TKS was. It was an extracurricular program for high school students that was very intense and taught you about what are all the skills and things that you need to be a startup founder and entrepreneur, and also what can you do uniquely. And it was focused on technologies. So as a student, you go through the program, you know nothing about anything. You don't know how to code. They don't teach you how to code. It's not your regular coding program. And you pick up an exponential technology like blockchain or AI. And I went through that program. I learned about cellular agriculture. I picked up BCIs. I know Shifra on the podcast was also super into BCIs. I built a bunch of computer vision algorithms for self-driving cars, and was within a year speaking at conferences about these projects, because at that time, machine learning and blockchain were still very new and still very kind of fresh words. Machine learning less so, but blockchain and computer vision and cellular agriculture. This year, I was actually supposed to speak at South by Southwest about cellular agriculture, which is so cool if it had been to happen. So I went through this journey through the program, and I'll make this last bit much shorter, but I went through the first year of the program. I did it for a total of 2 years. After the first year, it was my senior year of high school, and I was going to university. I was going to the University of Toronto for computer science. And just a month before that began, the university experience began, I was meeting a lot of people in my program and campus, and I was quickly seeing that I was not excited or confident that I would find my future co-founders here. There was a stark contrast between the community and the vibe of university and the community and the vibe of TKS. And within, a few weeks, I was really thinking about not going, taking a gap year. What would I do in the meantime? And at the same time, the Knowledge Society founders, Naveed and Nadeem Nathu, were looking for someone to hire, and they couldn't find someone to hire. So they approached me and they said, we actually think you'd be the perfect fit because you know how to learn. And we don't care that you don't know anything. We don't care that you don't have a degree or that you literally just do not know how to do any of the jobs that we would want you to do, but you know how to learn and you know that you'll pick it up fast. So I dropped out of university. I joined TKS within 3 days. Over the 2 years of working for them, I was a juggler of all things, but I mainly supported the community, and also I managed all operations to launch them to New York, Boston, Ottawa, Vegas, which was their first launch outside of Toronto. So that was a crazy experience. Through that, I also did some side consulting. So this February, for example, I was in LA consulting for Jaden Smith and Drew Fitzgerald at 501c3 on their water filtration systems. I've consulted for Microsoft's executive team, for Walmart Canada, for Interact's executive team. They're also a Canadian debit organization company. So I've done a lot of work in the startup world over the past 2 years. And this summer, I kind of had a few epiphanies where, one, I felt that I was in a place where I was ready to start my own thing. And two, I also felt that I was in a place where I needed to do a lot of exploration of topics that weren't related to the startup world, but I thought were really, really important to life and really, really important for me to build certain principles for life. So I'm taking a break, and this February, I'm ready to dive back into the climate tech world and hoping to build something there.
Wow. I can see why you and the Shifra get along. You definitely both sort of have like a million things going on all the time. Yeah. Geez, you're only 19 as well. That's mildly depressing. I mean, I'm 30 and yeah, I've got around to some of those things, I guess, now. That's awesome. I'm not even sure where to start. There's so many different things to like jump into for interesting debates and stuff. And I'm kind of just like, I don't understand how a 19-year-old gets to consult for Microsoft and other like all those endless list of cool things that you've just done. Can you elaborate on that part just to like satisfy my curiosity?
Yes. So mainly it began through TKS. Through the program, they would do these things called challenges where you practice doing a consulting sprint for about 2 weeks. And they only have 2 of those during the year. So it's a 10-month program. And for 2 weeks, twice a year, you get to consult for a company. And they have one company that everyone consults for. So TD, for example, is a bank in Canada. They did that challenge for one of those years. And there's around 50 teams consulting and basically recommending solutions to the problems that companies facing internally. And the top, I would say 3 to 4 teams actually get to present them and then perhaps even work on them over that summer. So I did that through TKS, ended up getting really good at it. And then whenever I'd be at conferences, a lot of the consulting experiences, especially the recent ones, just happen through almost like a network effect or meeting people and being like, hey, I know how to learn really cool things. And we've just established a good reputation, I guess, with people, or even not that, the skill of learning, like learning really fast and figuring things out and asking good questions and thinking from first principles. And a lot of the people that I would meet or just have a conversation with, and it had nothing to do with consulting, maybe even nothing to do with work, but was just meeting where like, you are someone I need to work with. That's what happened with Jaden Smith. He was like, I need your brains. Like, we got to do something together. So that's kind of how most of it happens organically outside of TKS. And yeah, that's kind of what we offer. We've done it pro bono as well. And the only ask is they share information with us. We sign an NDA, and within 2 weeks, we'll work on it all day and night and recommend something for you to solve some of your challenges or problems.
Cool. Okay. So, I mean, I haven't met everyone from TKS, but it sounds like a ridiculously amazing opportunity to go on and like education. I mean, I've really enjoyed interviewing like Olympians on the podcast and like the kind of mindsets and beliefs that they've had. I've really enjoyed unpacking. And like you described TKS as like Olympic training for like changing the world, which is just the most awesome sounding description ever. Can you elaborate on what that means and the kind of training that they did to like help you train the world and the kind of mindsets that it's given you?
Yeah. So they only had one session per week. I think the core of TKS was about you. It was very much, do you want to do this? And then are you willing to put in the work? And are you willing to figure out how to do the things that you want to do? So TKS has a session per week, and it's around 3 hours. And so you have in-person sessions for 3 hours. And you also have an online platform where they have explore modules, which are around 2 to 3 hours each on almost every single exponential technology that you can imagine. So from biomimicry to gene editing to just literally almost anything. And they're 3-hour modules for you to quickly learn about that technology. And they have this kind of online platform where you learn about them really quickly, and you have a process for being able to go deep into them on your own. So most of the work that you're doing as a student is actually outside of the program and by yourself or with other students. And TKS kind of provides the framework, the resources, and the community, which is really, really important. I think people undermine how important community is, and it sounds like a throwaway word, especially in the startup world, because most companies are building products and trying to center community around those products, whereas TKS is all about, if we have the community right, then these students are going to flourish and they're going to do awesome things and they're going to work hard together. It's like a team. It's really like it's really just like building a team. So in these sessions, there are 3 types of sessions. There are kind of sessions where you're learning about exponential technologies. And that's when you are with a team of students, and within 3 hours, you're trying to just learn as much as you can and present about it. You're doing hackathons, and they're really like challenging and fun sessions. And that's what the in-person stuff is about. There's also mindset training and skill training. So TKS provides a lot of like high-end opportunities that you really wouldn't get otherwise outside of the program. So such as being able to go to Singularity U conference, being able to go to South by Southwest, going to CES. And you're not going there as participants, you're going there as presenters. All of this sounds very simple, but then when you take a step back and you look at the results, like you'll go through the program for 6 months and then suddenly you're being asked to speak out CES, you're being asked to speak at Web Summit. And that's because within 6 months, through these like kind of simple sounding formats and simple sounding structures, but are much harder obviously to create and sustain and implement and work at, you learn a lot, and you kind of have these, like I mentioned, these systems and these structures and these resources available in person and online. And then most of the day, you're the one that's choosing the topic that you want to go into. So they're never like, you need to learn about blockchain or you need to become an expert on gene editing. Like students will come in passionate about cancer. Students will come in not knowing anything at all and choose whatever field they'd like to go into. And the structure for learning, there's actually a process. It's called explore. And then there's learn, replicate, and create. So exploring is when you're learning about all sorts of different technologies. And this is actually a model that I use now for just learning. Like it's literally just a model that I use for learning, but we usually use it when applied to these exponential technologies. So explore is learning about as many as you can and just building out the top of your T structure. You're getting a breadth of knowledge on a lot of different things. And then to build out the bottom of the T, which is getting a depth of knowledge in 1 or 2 things, you have this 3-step process, which is learn, replicate, and then create. And learn is reading as much as you can about it, watching as many lectures as you can about it. And you are just like, this is how I become kind of relentlessly resourceful. This is how we pick up the scale of learning anything is you just go on the internet and you learn. And like it's really taught me that you don't need school necessarily, or you don't need to be even in a classroom or even taking a course to learn a lot about something that you're really interested in. A lot of those resources are free and accessible online through YouTube, through textbooks that you can search, through lectures. So that's learn. And then replicate is, especially when it comes to projects and technologies. So say, for example, with blockchain, a replicate that you could do is there are tutorials that exist online on how to create your own coins. And you use usually off of Ethereum's like smart contract technology are able to create your own coins and even deploy them on like the market. And obviously of no value, but you could do that. And if someone were to buy it, then it perhaps would have value. But replicate is basically finding projects, research papers, tutorials that exist online, and then just copying them. You're just learning how does someone even do this? What are all the pieces that go into it? The beauty is that you don't even need to understand most of it. You just need to become intuitive and familiar with it. So much so you do that, 2 or 3 times that you do kind of pick up what are the skills that you'll need to become an expert in this? What are the skills that you need to go to whichever depth that you would like to go with this technology, with this skill, with this certain domain of knowledge? And after that process is called create. And so that the third step of that process is now you do that. You pick up those skills, you learn Python, you learn R, you learn whatever you need to learn, and now you create something original of your own. And usually if you do that once, which is a very hard process, then you can kind of learn how to do it again and much faster the next time. So that's kind of the process that exists within TKS, the process that students go through at a very like high level. I hope that was a good explanation. And it's always a little.
That was great. I've looked at like different learning models for like code boot camps and these kind of things, and ones that kind of follow that kind of model are generally like the best, where you kind of learn something by like replicating it and such, and then sort of having a project straight away to like go and implement it, but like using your own sort of intuitive like building blocks of it to do stuff. Whereas if you just constantly only replicating, you never actually learn to like build your own thing. So you never actually have the confidence to go become a developer and actually do stuff for yourself. So it's really important as an end part. So I guess like, yeah, you really unpacked like how you gain so much confidence, just go and do stuff by being thrown in the deep end, like speaking at Web Summit, and like your horizons of what's possible must be like ridiculously amplified by that. So it sounds like an amazing experience. Like for me, like I just did Techstars with my company, and I mean, I've got kind of used to speaking to like really cool, important people on the podcast, but it was just like a bit of another level of like, we had this thing called Mental Madness, where for like 3 weeks, we just speak to like 10 really awesome humans a day, like the CTO of like Candy Crush, CTO of like IKEA and Disney, sort of, and you just kind of get used to the fact that like you're going to be pitching some insane person, and you kind of the first week you over prepare and you're like holy shit, and like by the end you're like, oh, I'll just have a chat with another cool person and it's fine, and you just kind of like, yeah, I'll just like email this person, I've never met them, but they'll probably want to talk to me because I'm doing some cool shit, and it just changes your horizons of like where you kind of think of yourself. Certainly like how I think of myself as a CEO as well, just sort of was definitely like risen, employing all the team, but like raising money, all these sort of things that like you're a bit scared of when you haven't done them before. But now I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have to implement this process, and this is on me, and it's nice. But yeah, I mean, you're still pretty young. So do you want to go and start a business that's basically going to change the world, or are you still looking to like get some more experience in things?
I really do want to start my own thing. Even going into TKS, the reason that I joined the company and the reason like I was even contemplating going or not going to university was I don't think I'm going to find my future co-founders here. And it's kind of always been the mental space that I've been in. And it's not because of TKS. I don't feel any pressure. I don't feel like it is a path I must walk or something. Like it's really just because like I've always known I gotta try building. A bit of it comes from a lack of trust in most people that are building. And I don't mean like just startup founders, but really that we haven't built the world in the most ideal way, in the most sustainable way. And to be experiencing that and to know that, and then to also work in the industry for the past 2 years and have conversations with, you say some people that you meet that are kind of have a high status, high name. It is intimidating at first. You do a lot of them and you realize that some of them are just playing things by ear. And it doesn't seem intimidating to me, and it seems like something I have to do, and it seems like something that like I just feel so strongly about the world that I want to live in, and I feel so strongly about just participating in life. So I do want to start my own startup, and I don't know if it needs to be billion person impacting right away. I imagine I'll fail, which is actually even a good goal not to actively pursue. So I know a lot about the climate space, or a decent amount, just because I've done a bunch of projects over it for the past year. And it could be something, I think, for climate change specifically, and this is going on, I'll keep it short. It's just a tidbit here about how I think the climate problem, it is urgent. We need some big solutions over the next 10, 15 years, and we need them urgently. And I think if we can knock down some of the top 3-4 solutions that I think will really help. So for example, electric vehicles, solving energy, and figuring out how to either make solar really efficient, and whether that's through something like quantum dots and the next level of solar panels, and just how we get solar energy, or if it's fission or fusion. And then also cellular agriculture. Like I think lab grown meat is going to be huge over the next 10 years. I think it's something that's going to be coming out over the next 2. We've already reduced prices from, like $100K to $50 for a patty right now. So it's something that I think is really going to help a lot. And I can aim for those big areas, but we can also look at industries like cement, industries like construction or retrofitting, where you're taking old buildings and making them sustainable, and taking out their boilers and their pipes and their heating systems. And that's something that we can figure out how to do scalably and can have a lot of impact. So I have a lot of areas that I think I can go into. I don't know which one yet, but what I'm planning on doing is doing a problem map. So I have a lot of bits of knowledge about climate tech and climate change. So I have knowledge about the technologies that exist, but also the problems. And what I want to do is lay them out and really do I kind of want to lay them out and figure out a way to measure impact, or what I think will have the highest impact to solve what is the most problematic thing. And we can do that by carbon emissions. We can measure that by a lot of different metrics, and try to also assign an economic incentive value to them as well. So what's a problem that's economically incentivized? That I'm not starting a not-for-profit, that I'm not also becoming like a research lab trying to get government funding, but something that could potentially be sustainable in itself.
Cool. Yeah, I was in a very similar place to you. I did actually go to uni and was studying biology, but in my first year, I was like, it's not that hard to get a degree. I've got all this spare time. Like, I've had a really cool past few years. I didn't really need to like party all the time. I was a bit bored by that and just wanted to change the world. I was getting pissed off by like the environmental problem. And like, I was going through all like the sort of solar energy things, and like I basically write like Tesla's business plan and like the solar cells and those kind of things. And but then like I could have done solution mapping of like what I could do whilst at uni and stuff, and ended up going on like just sustainable transport within the city. And so like just deliveries of stuff instead of using vans, using bikes, or like quite big sort of cargo bikes and stuff. And so I ended up starting like a delivery company, and then like also like a lot of Deliveroo style stuff before Deliveroo existed, and it actually went really well. And I almost failed and I actually had to shut down the Deliveroo side of things because it was like too much work. And but I managed to like sell that after a few years, which was like my first ever company. So I hit the success metric of not failing, at least. It wasn't like a huge exit or anything, but it was like I learned so much doing it. And so I wish I'd maybe been more ambitious with it than I had been, because of looking back now, it's like, holy shit, I was solving some really big problems. And actually, if I had like gone for funding and like had the balls to like pay some developers to like build the app side of it, like I actually could have been Deliveroo, because I was like years ahead of them. But I was sort of a bit lost and didn't know what I was doing, and didn't really have like the mentorship for that. And it was amazing what I did manage, I guess. But I would love to help with your problem mapping, because I was doing biology and I did do some of that stuff. And certainly at the time I was quite interested in like algae biofuels, and like it's such a cool area and it's getting like way better. I mean, this was like 9 years ago or something that I was looking into it, so it was still a bit ahead of the time. But now like the improvements on sort of DNA engineering and stuff, I'm pretty sure that it must be like commercial, I don't know the word, viable commercially, with like some funding to make that kind of stuff happen. And it just seems like a really sensible idea, especially for like jet fuel and that kind of stuff where things aren't going to like change so quickly.
I love that. And even from I was
going to say, I mentored a few other entrepreneurs who have gone on to start like sustainable businesses. So I've helped fund them and like connect them with other funders and stuff. So if you're doing something cool, like definitely give me a call. 1 for the problem mapping, and 2 for then getting money and stuff for it. Happy to be involved. But yeah, you were then about to say something.
I just get so excited when we talk about climate technologies. But I think even from like in the biology area, like there's like fuel and energy, but also carbon sequestration, I think is like a huge area, like even using soil for carbon sequestration or kelp. I think those 2 areas are underlooked at, which are really cool. So whenever I learn a ton more about those, I'll also keep you updated on those areas.
Carbon sequestration is like obviously such a cool answer to things, but it's a bit harder because of like who's going to pay for that. So if it's sort of linked in like you have to do it or something, that's possible, but it's a bit hard still. But I maybe introduce you to a friend who had on the podcast who runs a national park rescue, which is not related to this directly, but it does. Right, but they are conserving like huge amounts of rainforest and national parks and stuff. And but he's done a lot of like government lobbying and like been quite successful at being able to actually change government guidelines to make things happen for like the benefit of said country and planet. Dr. Niall McCann, and he's also just an awesome human. He's like rode across the Atlantic and skied across the Arctic and that kind of stuff. He's a bit of a nutter as well as doing awesome things in the world. So you should probably have a chat with him. And I'm happy to make connections. You can hear his podcast as well. I can send that to you. Yeah, so changing the world, that's a big ambition. It's kind of hard being young, as in I sort of feel like, you've got a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. You're only 19. Maybe chill out for a few years and go back to things and like life. How do you know that this is going to be like the best thing for you?
Okay, so first on the chill out comment, I get that all the time. And people assume I don't have fun or that like I'm not doing fun things. Like, for example, in the beginning of the year, I was traveling in Australia. I've been in LA 3 times this year. I was in Park City, Utah, just hanging out with friends. The summers are always spent at like cottages. Like, I'm a kid, I'm having fun. So I wouldn't say balanced. I don't think there really is such thing as balanced, but I can do it at a level where it works for me, where I can chill out. So I think that's happening. The other is, I think you can have so many life experiences, and there are so many things that I want to do and have. And I'm actually starting the startup because I know I have a lot of time. For example, one of the very random things that I want to do is I would love to be kind of in Asia and work as like a waitress or a bartender. Like, that's something that I would just love to do for like a month or 2 months. And I know I have so much time to kind of work on these things. Like, when we really realistically look at the scope of a startup, perhaps it'll take me a year and a half. If it goes really well, then maybe more. But I'm expecting to fail. Like, I'm expecting to kind of go a year and a half or 2 years into it and then not do well. And in between that period, like, if you talk to a lot of startup founders, like, in between that period, there's so much time to kind of do other things that you would want to do. And I'm also looking at it from a 10-year, 20-year perspective, assuming that I don't have a very unfortunate random death, which would be kind of sad. I have a lot of time. And I think that in itself has given me perspective that I should just run with what I am curious and what I am excited towards. Like, I find when we listen to other smart people talking about their journeys, or people who've talked about their regrets, it's kind of just like not listening to their gut. And a lot of information is telling me right now, like, this is just where I need to be, and this is just what I need to do. And I feel really strongly about it. And I also think, although I'm 19, I've had a lot more experiences than an average 19-year-old does. Just the ability to have talked to a lot of major CEOs, major founders, but also travel a lot and do like mission work myself. Last summer, I was in Guatemala helping out with orphanages, the country. And it's just so many like amalgamation of different things. I've played sports throughout high school. I was really serious about it. I was majorly into rugby, actually, and I was about to play for the city. I got extreme concussions, which stopped me from doing that, but that's something that I was interested in. So I feel like I've explored, and perhaps it's not everything, but I've explored enough to be like, I feel good and I feel excited. And even this break in between period I've taken a break from TKS and before I start something. And that's just because I felt like I needed to explore more about consciousness and psychedelics and creativity as well. And actually, right before the startup, I'm thinking of spending the month of January just working on a creative project, like a creative visual project, and learning music production. So yeah, it's really not as crazy as it seems, and ready to go hard when I start. But I think there's also an urgency piece. Climate problem does need a bit of more urgency. So I feel like it's not
urgent enough 10 years ago. It was urgent 10 years before that. And now it's like, oh my God, how is this not getting any more urgent? But yeah, it's funny talking to you. I'm like so similar in terms of like, I've taken lots of time to go to exploring. Like, I've been to North Korea, I've lived in sort of woods of Tasmania. I did like the Vipassana, that was stuff. I climbed like one of the most dangerous mountains in the world this year. Just like stupid stuff, because it's like life is too short and like my regrets would be too high if I didn't do these things. And also, after I sold my first business, I took off 3 months to go do music production. So it's funny to hear you say that.
Cool.
Definitely. I'm planning to do that over the Christmas break. I'm trying to have 2 weeks off from my startup and like just want to do writing and music really. And
oh my gosh, that's actually kind of crazy, because next week I'm also in a no meeting zone to do 2 weeks of writing. So that's really fun.
I'd like to see what you end up writing. I've enjoyed reading the emails and things. I wish I was that good at writing when I was your age. I think I only got good at writing about 2 years ago, or not shit at writing, maybe better wording it.
Yeah, I mean, you're pretty young too.
I'm fully aware, but compared to you, I feel suddenly super old. I'm like, wow, I had a whole extra like 35% of life, which is a reasonable amount. Like, I mean, like when I was 10, you didn't even exist, which is like, I didn't feel young when I was 10. Yeah, strange. Anyway, I do like that you have been exploring consciousness and creativity, because I've really found like psychedelics and stuff useful, and I kind of wish I had more time to take them. It's a bit hard running a business and stuff. But have you been like deliberate with the way you do that? Was it just like taking acid at festivals, or was it like more like, okay, I'm going to go on this journey with like a shaman and like really change my life? Like, can you go into that a bit?
Yeah, So my first trip was this summer, and I took LSD with my best friend. And we've had a lot of conversations on psychedelics over the past year, just a few here and there within a group of friends. And most of that was inspired by Tim Ferriss. Like we would listen to his podcast, we're learning about MDMA. It was very much from like a scientific point of view. And oh my gosh, like can this really help mental health and change a lot of things for people? And I've been in crowds where you could take them at a festival or whatever, but I was like, that can't be my first experience. Like I don't want that. And so when my friend was like, let's do it, like she had an experience a few months prior and was like, this was really crazy bonding experience. Like with the friend that she did it with, she was like, we just had such an intense level of empathy for each other. And this friend of mine, like we've been really close friends for a while. And so I was like, yeah, like I'd be going to do that. So we didn't have a shaman, but it was and it wasn't intentional in the sense where it was like, these are the areas I want to explore. I was just like, this is an experience. The intentionality was like, I am going on a journey. I am having an experience and like, let it flow. So we were actually just at her house, like alone. There weren't any parents. Her parents were like up at their cottage or something. So it was just us. And we had like the whole day to ourselves. And the intentionality was like, okay, we're doing this together. The point of this is like, we want to go on an experience together. And that's kind of very much like why I like them too. It's less so for myself, more of like an experience with other people, especially if they're close people. And it's really just like a journey together. And I'm a huge people's person, not just from an extroverted, interactive way, but really like even prior to LSD and psychedelics. And even why I want to help build the world or build our future is like, I just feel a connection. Or even when I don't feel a connection to people, I'm like, I just see you as an individual. And it's very hard to describe, but I have respect and love for like people, what they do and who they are. So yeah, that's kind of what we did it, how we did it.
Amazing experiences with like just a friend. And yeah, it's like the nicest thing when you kind of do it in the right setting. Yeah, looking forward to doing that again next year, hopefully. Cool. Just thinking of so many different things. In terms of who's like the person that you're like, shit, this person's great?
Einstein. Like, I know that's a very generic answer. He's definitely one of them. Just the way he thinks. I've read some of his letters and really just who he is as a person. So I can't even say like he's a genius and blah, blah, blah. And it's really just my admiration for him actually came from just the way that he described life and the way that he described love, or the way he talked about his way of seeing the world. I'm so grateful this person exists and that they just got to exist and do what they do. So him, I admire. I don't really have someone I feel like I look up to. And the reason for that is because one, I feel like we can find inspiration in everyone. The people that are around me are the ones that I find the most inspiration from, like my direct friends, my community, the TKS community. And then two, it's because we're all kind of the same, especially when you start meeting people that you really thought were like at a higher degree of intellect or whatever status. You just realize like that we're so human and like there's no perfection there, and there's a lot of stories to admire and like a lot of people. But yeah, in terms of people that I like to read, I really love Osho. I don't know if you know who he is, but he's like a Sufi. He's like a mystic. Naval really likes reading him as well, and he's the guy who made like dynamic meditation. So he like literally made dynamic meditation Osho. So that's Osho. Osho. So I read a lot of his books, and he's really cool. And he's a bit hard to read though at first, I think, for some people, just because, and not in the Marcus Aurelius meditations type hard to read, in the sense where he sometimes speaks a bit brashly, or his tone seems a little odd, and you really have to kind of dig and read with like an open mind and kind of really try to understand what he means. But yeah, he's cool. I'm currently reading Geb though, which is cool. I don't know if you've heard of it. Godel. I never say his name right.
It's been on my list for a while. I really want to read that. It sounds like a proper project to take on. I run a podcast with a friend who is just one of the like most brainy person I've ever met, and so it's a bit of a privilege. And we read like a book a week and unpack them and sort of explain like what happens in the book and then what we've learned, how we to apply it to our lives or like to our business or like philosophy, etc. And it's been so much fun. I've learned so much more and been able to like, it's kind of forces you to read a lot of like the hard books that you kind of start, but then you're like, you don't quite get like to finish it because of like something else, and you're like, oh, this is easy. But yeah, some of the longer ones we haven't quite had time for, like that and Anne Ryan, that kind of stuff that like would be great to get through. But it's like maybe we need to stop recording for like 2 months just to read the one bloody book. Yeah. But yeah, do you do much talking with others about the books that you read and like knowledge sharing and like further learning, or do you just kind of read things and like try and absorb it as much as possible? Like how do you learn the most you can from the stuff?
I do that sometimes. There's especially, I kind of always come back to TKS because where a lot of us read and listen to similar things. So we usually converse together, or I'll have a friend that I know is reading something at the same time. Like even with Gab right now, we have 3 friends that are reading it simultaneously.
Nice.
So that's really cool. And we'll just hop on a call sometimes. Yeah, I have friends that I will just like randomly FaceTime and be like, I know you read this book. Osho actually was introduced to me by a friend. His name's Mateo Arias. He's actually a singer. And the first 2 Osho books I read, I think I called him for 3 hours, like after every one of them, to be like, let's discuss this. I've learned so much. So I do that sometimes. I don't do that all the time. I find often what usually happens is actually concepts are discussed more than books themselves. So pre-COVID dinners or Zoom dinners, but mainly like pre-COVID dinners and hangouts is discussing, like we'll be talking about self-awareness, and that's when we'll start pulling from books and we'll start talking about things that people have mentioned and kind of discuss it more by a topic basis rather than a book basis. But yeah, there's a bit of it.
Cool. Sounds like you guys should start a podcast on your epic discussions. You can listen to that. Nice. And then, okay, final few things. What is one of your earliest ever memories?
From being 3 years old, I really vividly remember, because I was in Pakistan then, so we moved to Canada when I was around 3. And I just remember everything. Like, I remember all the neighbors. I remember their names. I remember, like, all the things that we would do. And it's really fun. Like, it's a very, like, communal neighborhood that we lived in. The streets were all, like, made out of like dark cement, like coal-ish. And I don't know what the word for that is, but what we would do is just for fun, there were potholes kind of all across the street. And so we'd have these like huge cauldron like pots, and all the dads would actually like bring out cauldron pots, and they would put coal in the potholes and stuff, and they would like light it on fire, or they would heat it up, and they would put these cauldrons on, and they would make a dish for the entire neighborhood. And that was like really cool. Like it wasn't like a village or anything. And yeah, I just have memories of us like eating, and we would get out folding chairs and you just like sit around. It's evening time and the sun is setting and it's dark, and people would just be chatting. And like if anyone drove to the street, they just have to make a U-turn away because there's like 20 people in the middle of the street sitting around waiting for some food to be made and just chatting and drinking tea. So I remember that when I was 2 years old, and I would be running around between chairs.
Wow, cool. That was vivid and not like the normal sort of story that I get. Like, I mean, none of them are normal. I haven't had someone with such vivid memories from that age. Most people are like, I've had quite a few people being like, I barely remember my childhood, which has been quite interesting. I just like, as in, you know, how you're interested in consciousness. I'm just kind of fascinated by like, it's just such a weird question that people just don't get asked, and it's like random. And sometimes I get amazing answers, sometimes they're boring, but like, it's just all going into my like learning about random stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Final question. What is one of the kindest things or recent nice act of kindness that someone has done for you recently?
I think like my mom. I was in Montreal 2 weeks ago, and I didn't have to quarantine, but I just wanted to be safe when I came back home. So I took a COVID test and then was in the basement for 3-4 days. And just her like having to bring down every meal here, and me being like, can I have some water? Can you bring me a jug of water? Are there any snacks available? Like, could you just throw in a bag of chips or something? It was just like very kind of her to do those so consistently. I really appreciate it. I've lived away from my parents for the past year. I had an apartment downtown with a few friends, and coming back home, I'm like, whoa, I really see my parents and appreciate them. And so
you are that kid, but also like you are just like a human, and like you're technically not actually their responsibility or anything. Like they can kind of do what they want. And yeah, I've definitely caused my parents enough problems and such. And you're like, yeah, but why do you guys put up with me? What's going on here? It's kind of strange. Cool. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It was just as enjoyable as I hoped it would be. And yeah, so many cool, interesting things that we've unpacked. I've had a really great time. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to where you go with your life and the things you're going to do. And if you are planning out to do some problem mapping, I'd love to sort of see what your ideas are and give some input and help you along with any of the ideas that you want to follow up on. Yeah, how can people find you? Like you've got your newsletter and other stuff if they want a story.
Everything's my name. So if you go on Nazra Noushad, it's probably up on the podcast title. That's my website too. So nazranoushad.com. On the front page, you can sign up to get personal updates from me every month. I also use my Twitter pretty actively. So that's just at Nazra Noushad. Those are the 2 places I think you can find me best. And my website also has a contact form if you need to get in touch.
Cool. I'm so jealous of the fact you have a unique name where you can get all of the URLs and handles. Even before the famous Sam Harris, I still had struggled. And then the famous one happened, and then life, yes, you can't find me anywhere. Great. Cool. Well, thank you so much. And Nazra is spelled Nazra, and Noushad is Noushad, in case you didn't get it from just hearing it, because I didn't. Well, anyway, thank you so much for being on the podcast. And I guess we'll find out what you're up to, and I'll definitely add the odd update if you do something super cool, because it's nice to keep people involved.
And thanks again.
Well, thank you for listening to the first episode with Nazra. She was great, so much so that there is a second episode coming out next week, because we spoke for an hour and a half. I just really enjoyed the whole thing and thought that I'd share the whole thing. So second part is coming out next week. We go into consciousness, meditation, and sort of follow on a bit more on some of the thoughts around like climate, and a lot of discussion on books and things that have changed our lives. And yeah, she's got a lot of interesting insights that are certainly worthy of listening to. If you enjoyed this one, you will enjoy that one. So I shall see you. Well, I won't see you. I won't have any interaction. You will hear it next week if you choose to. And if you send me a message through the email or contact me on Instagram, then yes, I will also talk to you. But otherwise, you can just listen to it and enjoy. So until next week, you do you, and possibly try and add in some growth so you can become an even better you than you already were, even though you are perfect as you are, and you should feel accepted for however you are right now. Goodbye. Thanks for listening to the show. If you have any questions, please reach out to me through the website at growthmindsetpodcast.com. I do love talking to listeners. You can support us on Patreon or by leaving a review on iTunes or telling a friend about us. But mostly, keep learning and keep growing.